Well, hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. Today we're looking at an interesting one, another side story, another that's based on a video game, but this one is called Space to the End of a Flash. Now, most of you may know this as the PS2 game Mobile Suit Gundam Encounters in Space. So this was a PS2 game that was made based on Encounters in Space, the third of the Gundam trilogy, but it also included an optional side mission storyline that you could start called Thoroughbred, which is the name of the Pegasus class cruiser. But it also jumped into another side story that took place during the One-Year War, as is the same with most of these other side stories I've been covering that are based on games on the PS1 or PS2. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe and like this video as you're watching it. It seems like it's something you'd like. And if you want to check out the giveaway, there's a link in the description below. But let's get started. All right, so this was a PS2 game released in 2003. So if we go by the order that I've been doing these side stories, we had Zeon Front, Lost War Chronicles, and now Encounters in Space. These are games that came out each year, 2001, 2002, 2003, for the PS2. And, the first two being more of a tactical land-based, but this third one being in space. And I gotta say, if I was a fan of Gundam back when these games were released, it would have been heaven for me. I'm a huge gamer. I had all the consoles back then. The only game I had played, Rise of the Ashes, not knowing it's Gundam, so I never really followed up with anything with the name Gundam because I didn't know what it was. But these games are awesome, and they have these stories. And here in a second, I'm kind of going to dive into the story so you get an idea of what's going on. But what's interesting and different about this Gundam game compared to the previous is it primarily takes place in space. And so the controls are a lot different. I would say it's very similar to like a Space Harrier that evolved into a Panzer Dragoon that evolved into more of a 360 environment where you do have more movement controls on the battlefield, but it is still almost like you're holding down the fire button, dragging it around the different targets you're going to fire on, but then there's also a different button to fire your melee, to fire your Vulcan guns. And as I played this, it was originally with the original storyline with Encounters in Space. But then there's that additional one you could choose that's Thoroughbred, where it's the same gameplay mechanics. But what I like about it, it is pretty challenging. It requires you to play fast-paced, using one of the shoulder buttons to quickly change targets. So as you destroy one, you can get to the other. There's a boost, so you can boost around. And so I'd say the gameplay is very different than the land-based tactical ones, and it's more about a tactical space battle. You know, with the less gravity and the way thrusters would work in space, I think it lends itself well to the gameplay mechanics, and it is a lot of fun to play. I played it on an emulator. It was probably 99% flawless. There's a little bit of hiccups here and there, so I would definitely consider purchasing this to be played on an actual PS2. And so this is actually a sequel to Journey to Jabra, which I have not played. And it looks like that came out in 2000 or 2001, depending on the region. I'll have to look into that too and see if there's anything interesting about that. So this was also adapted to a novel and a manga. And again, the full title is Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story, Space to the End of Flash, whereas in the game, you would just choose the option under story that said Thoroughbred. The manga's in, it looks like 3 volumes, and it looks like it was from 2003 to 2004. So I guess it's really cool that at the same time as the game coming out, they have a manga that kind of goes through everything. And what is cool about this one, unlike the Lost War Chronicles we just looked at, is this does feature Gundams, and it does feature some brand new Gundams that we're not too familiar with. And so, yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive into that. The first interesting thing that's really cool that it has is this SCVA-72 Thoroughbred. So this is a Pegasus class assault carrier. If you're familiar with the white base, this is pretty much what it is, just kind of a little bit different. It kind of has that updated design to be a little more modern, but it also has the technical specifications to make it more use in stealth-based combat. So it has a 580mm two-barrel main gun, twin megaparticle cannon, front missile launcher, rear missile launcher, twin anti-aircraft gun. Minovsky craft system, as we'd expect. Now, this was launched and used during the Battle of Abaoku. The idea was to pick off any Zeon forces between Granada and Abaoku, Granada being the moon base. So there was a lot of back and forth there. And if I remember correctly, there's that episode of MS Igloo that kind of did the same thing, where that's where they launched the balls and the pods. There was kind of the little battles going on there during MS Igloo. So it's kind of cool to see that there's some crossover. Now, the captain of that ship is Kilstein Lombard. Pretty cool name, I gotta say. You know, with Gundam, it's a crapshoot. Either the name is a standard cool name, the name is just kind of crazy and whatever, or the name just has that kind of mix where it looks like it's taking real names and words and just smashing something together. Kilstein Lombard, I can go with that. So one of the main characters and pilots of the story, Luce Cassel, and as we can see here, looks cool, has a cool looking blue Federation uniform that he's using. And not too much about the character because he is, you know, in this Thoroughbred / what was that called? Space to the end of a Flash, which is kind of an interesting name in itself. But he does die in it. But his death kind of affects the characters. He was in an RX-78-4 Gundam Unit 4, so G04, not a GP04, and not an RX-78-2. So this is an interesting time that we're seeing these other types of Gundam units. You know, kind of looking at it here, I'm getting a little bit of, you know, what we would see from an RX-78-2, maybe a little bit of the Alex as well. I think that's kind of the main things we're seeing here, but some unique armor going on, especially in the shoulders. And according to this was developed into the RX-80PR Pale Rider. So that is some interesting information. This has a 60mm Vulcan gun, beam saber, hand beam gun, an XBRM-79H2 hyper beam rifle, hyper bazooka, mega beam launcher, and shield. And some other special equipment and features, magnet coating, energy pack, and booster pack. So one of the things about this character, Luce, in the GP04 is he does die. His mission is to shoot this mega beam particle cannon that used up the energy of the 04, the Gundam 04 unit, and I guess that caused some damage. They were able to rescue him, but the wounds that he sustained inevitably killed him, unfortunately. So this affected Ford Romfellow, who, and it could be due to the Japanese translation. I'm playing the story of this, and I forgot to mention that's in SDG generation Genesis. And sometimes it goes by Fold, F-O-L-D, and I guess that is the pronunciation of the R and the L being kind of similar when you're translating from Japanese to English. But I believe it is meant to be Ford Romfellow. Again, a very cool name. I think that works out. It's unique, and it seems to take common names or words in English and smash them together, and so I think that works. But what's cool about this is his flight suit is red instead of the blue. The red is similar to his Gundam unit, so he has a G05. Again, not a GP05. I gotta try to get that out of my head. I keep on wanting to say GP because those are those Gundam prototype units, when these are technically prototypes because they're the RX type experimental, but it is a G05, so that's the RX-78-5, Gundam Unit 5, G05. Again, looks just like the G04. It kind of has that RX-78-2, the Alex look to it. A little bit different armor pieces here and there. Let's look at the armament: 60mm Vulcan gun, beam saber, hand beam gun, that hyper beam rifle, hyper bazooka, giant Gatling. So that's something different that we saw from the G04. Shield, magnet coating, booster pack. So some of the similarities here, but between the G04 and the G05, these are the two main characters in this side story. Again, their mission being to pick off any sort of Zeon troops that were traveling between the Granada moon base and Abaoku. And when it comes to the Principality of Zeon, they have a unique bad guy, ace pilot character. His name is Mallet Sanguine. Yeah, very cool. Apparently he's pretty crazy. It kind of lends to his characteristic. Yeah, they even say Mallet is arrogant, highly direct and proud, and even calls himself the best of the Zeon people. So this guy's super arrogant, and I guess it works well for where his role with Zeon. And it says something about him. He considers Cassilia Zabi to be his mother. So he's that crazy and that ingrained into Zeon, where he sees the head, I guess, matriarch really of Zeon. If you think about any of the sort of female roles during that time, his own mother. So that's very interesting. And so he actually gets killed off by Ford Romfellow with the beam saber to the cockpit. So yeah, that ends him right there. 0079. So I guess that part of Gundam Legacy maybe takes place during the early or the later parts of the 1 Year War. And then we must, I guess, with Gundam Legacy, then pick up later with the other characters. That's going to be very interesting to get into Gundam Legacy and see what that's all about. Okay, so he piloted an MS-09R2 Rick Dom 2, so that's the more cooler looking Dom, and then the MS-11 Act Zaku. So let's look at that. This is not one I really touch upon often or see often. But the MS-11 Act Zaku is a Principality of Zeon mass production general purpose mobile suit. It was featured as a mobile suit variation in MSX, so that's early 80s. It later appeared in the anime Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam in the manga Space to the End of a Flash and Mobile Suit Gundam Outer Gundam manga. So here's something else I can take a look at. This is between 1988 and 1992. Interesting. But yeah, let's look at this Act Zaku. So we're seeing what it looked like in Zeta Gundam. And there's the rear. This is the MSX, so the original version. It looks like they take the Zaku design. I guess they kind of extended the nozzle on the front. They make more prominent tubing on the side. And the shoulders seem to stick out more to a point. So that's some of the different characteristics there. But if we look at the armaments, a bullpup gun. So that's different. A custom beam rifle. So having a beam rifle, that's different than normal Zaku's. The BR-87A beam rifle. Same type of beam rifle used by Hyzak and Marisai. M1201A1 120 millimeter machine gun. Zaku bazooka. Giant bazooka too. You can't have too many bazookas, I guess. The Zaku machine gun Kai. Large heat hawk and a beam saber. So a heat hawk and a beam saber. That's interesting. And a shield. So yeah, that's kind of very interesting that we have the main bad guy, Mallet Sanguine. Was that his name? Mallet Sanguine, yeah. And he uses an Act Zaku that we don't see much, but here we go. And really, that's it for that side story. Not too much to it. It seemed that it was really made about the game, but I guess some interesting stories when it comes to having those two, the G04 and G05 Gundam units, a Thoroughbred, so we get this awesome other Pegasus class assault carrier. Cool stuff like that. I don't know if anyone else has played the game. I myself have actually played it and beat it, and I thought it was amazing. It was right when I got into Gundam that I first played that game and thought it was great. So I actually didn't play this side story, so I'm going to have to jump into that. And eventually I'll have to take a look at the manga. I'll have to see if that's translated. But if anyone has any other further information about this side story, yeah, let me know in the comments below. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later.